Let's be honest, when we talk about the cost of living crisis, we often treat it like a passing storm, something temporary, like a few months of high bills and pricey groceries before things go back to normal. But for millions in the UK, there is no normal to return to. This isn't just a rough patch, this is everyday life, and it's not just about scraping by with less money. It's about living in a system that constantly demands more from people who already have the least. This video isn't about money-saving hacks or coupon tips, it's about what it truly costs, financially, emotionally and physically, to be poor in modern Britain, because living on the edge means making impossible choices. Heating or eating, work or caregiving, surviving or breaking. Let's unpack the reality. According to the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, over 14.4 million people in the UK are living in poverty. That's more than 1 in every 5 people, and even more shocking, 4.2 million of them are children. In one of the richest countries in the world, that's not just troubling, it's a national disgrace. Now, poverty in the UK doesn't always look how people imagine. It's not always someone sleeping rough or visibly begging on the streets. Most of the time, poverty looks invisible. It looks like a working parent skipping meals so their child can eat. It looks like families choosing between heat and rent. It looks like stress-induced insomnia, anxiety and shame, hidden behind tired smiles and tight budgets. Here's a truth that shatters a common myth. 56% of people in poverty live in households where someone works. That's called in-work poverty. And it proves that simply getting a job doesn't always fix the problem. Wages haven't kept pace with inflation. Jobs are often part-time, 0 hours, or underpaid. Meanwhile, essentials, housing, transport, food, keep climbing in cost. You can work hard, play by the rules, and still find yourself slipping deeper into debt. That's not a personal failure. That's a systemic one. Housing is the single biggest expense for low-income households and also the biggest trap. In 2024, the average private rent in the UK hit £1,276 per month. In London, it's now over £2,000. That's more than many people's entire monthly income. For those on universal credit, there's a housing component called the local housing allowance. It's supposed to help cover rent, but in many areas, it doesn't even cover the cheapest third of available properties. The result? Families are forced into overcrowded, substandard housing, cold, damp, sometimes infested. Others face eviction and homelessness. As of 2025, more than 100,000 households live in temporary accommodation, the highest number on record. Many of them are working families with children doing homework in B&Bs and shelters. This is what it means to live on the edge. It's not just a housing crisis, it's a dignity crisis. When the war in Ukraine sent global energy prices soaring in 2022, UK households were hit hard. By early 2023, average annual energy bills had doubled, reaching £2,500. Government aid came, but much of it ended in 2024. Prices stayed high while support vanished. For the poorest, energy costs take up more than 14% of their income, compared to just 4% for the richest households. Then there's the issue of prepayment meters, used disproportionately by low-income households. They pay higher rates and cut off automatically when credit runs out. No warning, no mercy, just darkness. In the UK, one of the wealthiest nations on earth, millions can be left without light or heat because they couldn't top up a meter. Food prices are up more than 19% since 2022. We're not talking about fancy takeaways, we're talking about basics: milk, bread, pasta, eggs becoming out of reach. In 2024 alone, the Trussell Trust handed out over 3.1 million emergency food parcels. Independent food banks aren't even included in that number. This isn't about people mismanaging money, it's about families where the numbers simply don't add up. After paying rent, energy and transport, there's often nothing left for food. And we're not talking about skipping a latte, we're talking about skipping meals. Parents going without so children can eat, relying on cheap white bread and tins. Malnutrition, something we thought had disappeared, is quietly returning to Britain. Getting around when you're poor isn't easy. It's expensive, it's unreliable, and it's often humiliating. Public transport outside of London is patchy at best. Buses may run only once an hour if they run at all. And a single ticket, that can be £3 or more each way. For someone earning minimum wage, That's a big chunk of the day's pay. Car ownership isn't much better. With fuel prices, insurance and maintenance climbing, driving becomes unaffordable. But not having a car can mean missed job interviews, cancelled doctor's appointments or lost shifts. The poorer you are, the more you pay, not just in money, but in time, stress and lost opportunity. Universal credit was supposed to simplify the welfare system. But for many, it's become just another struggle. There's a 5-week wait for the first payment, long enough to drive people into debt or the arms of food banks before they've received a penny. And then there are the sanctions, cutting off payments for small mistakes like missing an appointment or filling a form incorrectly. It's a system full of traps. Even when you do get it, it often isn't enough. As of 2024, the monthly standard allowance for a single adult under 25 was just £292.11, less than £10 a day to cover everything. Even low-wage workers often rely on universal credit top-ups. But as you earn more, your benefits drop quickly, creating a sense that you're punished for trying to move forward. Here's the cruel twist. Being poor in Britain is actually more expensive than being comfortable. This is called the poverty premium, the extra costs low-income people face simply because they're poor. For example, prepayment meters cost more per unit than paying by direct debit. Pay-as-you-go phones, they cost more per minute or per gigabyte than contract plans. If you can't buy in bulk, you'll end up paying more for each item. And if you live in what's considered a bad postcode, you'll pay more for car insurance, even if you've got a completely clean record. If you need emergency credit, payday loans and buy now, pay later schemes fill the gap, but with dangerous long-term costs. Altogether, the poverty premium adds somewhere between £490 and £750 per year in extra costs for those who can least afford it. Poverty isn't just a financial issue, it's a health crisis. People in deprived areas are far more likely to suffer from chronic illnesses like diabetes, heart disease, and mental health struggles. Life expectancy is actually 10 years shorter in poor areas than in wealthy ones, and it's not just about lack of healthcare, it's the stress of money problems, poor nutrition, damp housing, and not having access to green spaces. And then there's the emotional toll, the constant grinding stress. Worrying at 3 a.m. about bills, hiding financial struggles from your children, missing out on life, not because of choice, but because of cost. Poverty doesn't stop with adults, it affects the next generation most deeply. Children growing up in poverty are more likely to struggle in school, develop physical and mental health issues, and remain poor as adults. By age 5, the vocabulary gap between rich and poor children can be nearly 19 months. That's nearly 2 academic years before they've even properly started. They wear second-hand uniforms, miss school trips, and carry burdens far beyond their age. Poverty doesn't just take away today, it mortgages their future. Before we close, let's recap what we've uncovered. Poverty in Britain is widespread and often hidden in plain sight. It's not just about unemployment. Millions of people in work still struggle to make ends meet. The housing crisis traps families in unaffordable, insecure accommodation. Many are forced to choose between heating and eating, while food poverty means skipping meals is a daily reality for some. Transport costs isolate those already on the margins. The benefits system, intended as a safety net, leaves many falling through the cracks. The poverty premium means those with the least often pay the most for basic services. The impact on health, both physical and mental, is profound, and children, above all, bear the deepest scars. Poverty in the UK isn't always visible, but its effects are far-reaching and deeply felt. Understanding these realities is the first step towards change. Poverty in Britain isn't inevitable. It's not natural. It's structural, and that means it can be changed. We can raise benefits to reflect real living costs, regulate rent to prevent exploitation, reform universal credit to support, not punish, invest in public transport, affordable housing and food security, tax wealth more fairly to fund support systems. The question is not whether we can afford to fix poverty. The question is whether we choose to. The real cost of poverty in the UK isn't just measured in pounds and pence, it's measured in stress, missed opportunities, shorter lives and silenced dreams, and here's the truth: no one chooses poverty. But as a society, we do choose whether to look the other way or to demand better. If this video moved you, challenged you, or opened your eyes even a little, don't let it stop here. Like this video to help others see it. Share it with someone who needs to understand what's really happening. Subscribe for more content that uncovers the hidden truths behind today's headlines. Together we can break the silence. Together we can push for change, because poverty in the UK isn't just a statistic. It's someone's story, someone's life right now.